Gateway Pundit Jim Hoft with a new, truly breaking news story having to do with voter fraud, as we aptly named it as we were discussing before the show. All these left-wing groups that are get out the vote organizations. It's not get out the vote. It is get out the fraud. You guys have an update to a story that you had broke on War Room a few months ago about GBI Strategies. It was kind of focused in Michigan, but you are now learning that this fraudulent voter registration mill was operating in multiple states, multiple cities, much more than you guys had previously known. Can you give a little bit of background for those who are not familiar with the story, but what this new exclusive dropping today reveals?
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, this is still growing, this story. It's developing. We're finding this similar groups as GBI Strategies have been operating in several states. So it wasn't just GBI. You know, when we first started reporting on GBI Strategies, we had a report from the state police from Michigan, and they had been looking at this this group that's funded by Democrats, $500,000 by Joe Biden and Senator Gary Peters in 2020. That's quite a bit of money that they were throwing into this group, and we found out then that they had faked a lot of registrations. And when I say a lot, we're talking thousands that were turned into county clerks around and city clerks around the state of Michigan. We found that they were the GBI offices were in several of the majority black communities in the state. They were filling out these registrations. They were turning them into the clerks. They were even mailing stacks of registrations to the clerks. One clerk in Muskegon, as you may recall, this is on the western side of Michigan, she got a stack of 8,000 to 10,000 in one day of these registrations. In a community that has 30,000 eligible voters, she gets 8,000 to 10,000 registrations. Of course, this raised a red flag. She communicated with the local police, who contacted the state police, who then contacted the Attorney General's office, Dana Nessel, and she eventually contacted the FBI. They said they were investigating this situation in Michigan with GBI Strategies, but nothing has ever developed on it. And that was nearly 4 years ago now. What we found recently was, originally we had this police report from the state police, Natalie, that was heavily redacted. And so it was hard, of course, to make out names and different facts. But we do have a copy now, and Patty McMurray from Gateway Pundit is leading this. She has a copy of the unredacted police report, and what we're finding are a lot of new nuggets to report. One is that originally, what was a very strange situation was that one of the offices in Michigan, they found some big guns with silencers that were kept in the office. And so they contacted the police, and the secretary, or the Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, the media, and the Washington Post wrote a hit post on Gateway Pundit about this. They all said that these guns belong to the landlord. Well, we can confirm on your program today, Natalie, that that's not true. The guns belong to Gary Bell. He's the one who was heading up the GBI Strategies operation in Michigan and several other states. And we know that now because he had said that during a phone call that was redacted before, but now we have the information where he admits that those guns were his. Now, what they were doing in that office, anyone knows. We don't know that. It seems a bit odd that a voter registration organization would keep these guns and silencers in their offices in the Detroit area. Let me add one thing, Natalie, and what we also found out is that there are several states where there is GBI Strategies operations. We can confirm in Florida, Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Washington, D.C. These are several of the states where GBI Strategies was operating in 2020. It wasn't just Michigan. It was numerous other states. We also believe that GBI Strategies was changing its name to operate in some of these states, because Gary Bell himself had said that he was operating in 25 states in all of the battleground states in 2020. And we believe that some of those operations had a different name, or they changed their name so that they wouldn't be identified if someone caught on to them.
So I want to connect this to something that we were discussing on yesterday's show with Richard Barris of the People's Pundit. It's basically this new narrative that I've seen developing pretty recently. CNN, MSNBC, they continue to vamp on and on and on about how turnout this year, this election, is going to be so astronomically high. And I think when you look back to the alleged, 83 million votes that Joe Biden, he never says that number anymore. But it is an interesting narrative, I think, in the context of what you're talking about, right? These like artificially astroturfed voter registrations, when they're trying to, I think, predictably program the American people to think that the turnout for this election is going to be atypically high. Now, sure, that may be because there is actually genuine, eagerness and excitement to vote for probably Donald Trump. But I also see a more nefarious side to that, which I think interplays quite nicely with the story that you're talking about. So in terms of the threat that GBI Strategies and these, similar kind of shadowy, shady organizations that, like you alluded to, they always like to rebrand, but it's the same individuals behind it. Where are they operating ahead of the 2024 election?
I am just taking a guess, but I would assume they're everywhere. I truly believe they're everywhere. I think this is the key to the Democrat winning an election. We know in 2020, Natalie, we tracked this at Gateway Pundit. Joe Biden had like 20, 30 people who would come out to see him. There was no energy there. Even when they said he won the election, they had to do it in a parking lot with people sitting in their cars, and there was only about 50 cars there. There was no energy for that man. They came out 9 months later and said that the voters for Joe Biden, we found who they were, because Trump had gained in blacks, Hispanics, women, Jews, every category. Trump had picked up more voters. And they said finally after 9 months, oh, well, these are poor white voters in the rural areas. Complete garbage. This is the crap they're feeding us. And I believe that as we continue to investigate this, and tomorrow we have a huge piece coming out on Ohio and what's happening there. And Patty McMurray's working on it tonight, she promises me. But they're doing this in so many states, and I think this is the key to the Democrat victory. There is no energy for their Marxism. There is no energy for the open borders. There's no energy for transing kids and cutting off their genitals. It's just not there. So what are they doing? They're manufacturing, in my opinion, this is Jim Hoft, in my opinion, they are manufacturing millions of votes by using millions of manufactured registrations. And they captured some in Ohio recently. We're going to report on that tomorrow. But you're exactly right. That's how I believe, and I think, I just have so much admiration for Steve Bannon. My prayers are with him every day. But he's been consistent saying it was a stolen election. I think we're getting closer and closer to understanding the actual lawlessness of this. As you know, one important fact, Natalie, when you're faking registrations, and this one woman who they interviewed in Michigan with GBI Strategies, she admitted to 1,000 different registrations that were fraudulent. Each one of those registrations is a crime. We need to have Republicans out there who are willing to pressure local authorities to press charges against these people. It's the only way it's going to stop. And we have a lot of work to do between now and the next 95 days before the election to make sure that they're not doing this and they're not going to steal. But I agree with you 100%. The fact that the media now, of course, appears to be in on this, thinking that people are going to run out for Kamala Harris. No, it's not going to happen. They're just trying to, get the playing field, people used to hearing this nonsense, just like they did last time.
Well, we focused so much attention on this show in terms of the financing of the Democratic Party, what is the sort of, plug and play system in terms of it didn't really matter who the candidate was. But I think you can make the same critique that these get out the vote, get out the fraud operations, these artificially inflated voter registration, it's sort of a symptom of that bigger plug and play system where they don't actually have to have a likable candidate, or frankly, a candidate that's even breathing in with a pulse, because it's not actually about them, right? It's about the electioneering, the politicking, and the ballot harvesting that's going on the side. But to your point about how Republicans need to step up, when you guys are breaking these stories, why is it Jim Hoft? Why is it Patty McMurray at the Gateway Pundit? Why is it you guys that are having to do this research? Are there any, people coming in on the cavalry, whether it's Congress, Senate, that are here to help you, or is it just you guys?
Well, we did hear that the Congress was investigating this. One of the committees in Congress, they were asking for a lot of our information, but we just haven't heard back from them. And so we don't know where they are.
You haven't heard back from them? Walk the audience through that.
Yeah, I guess that's a pretty big story, because they've been looking at this for several months, and Patty's having a hard time contacting her friend, who is actually a congresswoman. So but you're right. If we don't do anything, if we sit on our hands and we're too afraid to stand up and say this is lawlessness, then we're going to lose. And I hope your audience understands that. We're going to lose if we don't stand up now and fight this fraud. And it is fraud. You can't fake registrations. You can't fake one. You can't fake 100. You can't fake 1,000 registrations. You certainly can't fake tens of thousands of registrations. And I believe we're looking at an astronomical number right now.
So this story that's coming out tomorrow, if people want to read it, get ahead of it, break it down for us one more time, but where can they go to follow you and make sure they read the story tomorrow? We'll have you on next week, but in the meantime.
Thank you, Natalie. Yeah, I believe this is going to be really big, because it just busts it wide open, and it shows you that there's other groups. We're going to talk about one of these other groups tomorrow. It's in Ohio. There was some developments that happened this past week. We're going to report on that tomorrow at the Gateway Pundit. And we also know of two other groups that we haven't reported on yet, too, that we believe are involved in this same type of manufacturing of ballot registrations. So tune into the Gateway Pundit tomorrow morning, and I'm going to make sure Patty stays up all night to make sure to be certain that report gets out, and we will have it up in the morning.
Jim Hoft, thank you for your service to this country and breaking all these stories, and thank you for joining us here in the War Room.
Thank you, Natalie.